The galaxy had already surrendered. Before Earth even joined the war, the Zarketh Dominion came like a disease. Silent at first, infecting the trade. Lanes swallowing colonies one by one. They didn't ask, they didn't negotiate. They didn't even gloat, they conquered. With efficiency, leaving behind only ash. And orbiting graveyards, when they reached the Terran border, they didn't expect resistance. After all, every other species had folded in weeks. The Federation of Lokari surrendered before a single shot was fired. The Silthari, known for their speed and elegance, ran until there was nowhere left to run. Zareth were used to watching empires crack. Earth didn't crack, Earth burned. They hit Ganymede Station first, 12,000. Dead, no warning, no survivors. They left a message embedded in the black box: you are next, cold. Robotic, final, and yet the humans didn't break, they didn't beg, they didn't send diplomats, they sent a ghost. The first time the galaxy heard the name of Verist, it was on a pirate frequency, intercepted near the shattered moons of Cathel. The footage was shaky, low quality, but the message was unmistakable. One Zarketh dreadnought, the Kulvashar 5 km of war steel, torn in half like it had been made of paper. No one saw the attacker, just the aftermath. 2 days later, a mining colony in neutral space broadcast a distress call. The Zareth had arrived, demanding submission. They never left. The colony reported a human ship, dark, massive, unregistered, arrived mid-siege. It didn't speak, it didn't ask questions. It opened fire. Every Zarketh vessel, 16 in total, gone in under 4 minutes. The colonists described it in hushed voices: a gunmetal juggernaut, engines that hummed like the breath of a god, a silhouette that felt ancient and wrong, as if it had no place in this galaxy. Its name, no registration, no flag, but when the radar pinged it, only one word came up: Verist. The Galactic Union tried to deny it, said it was a glitch, propaganda, a rogue AI, maybe even a hoax, but the dead kept piling up. Zarketh dead. Word spread fast across the stars. Ships began picking up fragments of encrypted transmissions, always the same pattern. Zarketh fleet detected. Verist inbound, evacuate system. Nobody ever saw it arrive. It just appeared. Mid-space, mid-battle, like it had always been there, silent, absolute. By week 3, over 24 Zareth war bands had vanished. By week 5, rumors said Verist had reached the inner core of Zareth-controlled space, and then something changed. The Zareth, for the first time in their brutal, calculated history, went quiet. Their fleet stopped advancing, some even retreated. Systems that had been under siege for months were suddenly abandoned. No one celebrated, no one cheered, because nobody believed the war was over. They believed Verist was just getting started. He sat alone on the bridge, boots resting on a rusted console, face lit only by the cold blue light of star charts. No uniform, no rank, just a scarred man with eyes that had seen too many good people turned into numbers. The war had taken everything from him, his brothers, his ship, his home, but the galaxy had given him something else in return: hatred. With a purpose. He didn't answer to governments. He didn't care about politics. He had no orders, no backup, just a relic ship brought back from hell and reforged in silence, and a promise carved into steel above his command seat: for every world they took, I'll take 10 of theirs. He leaned forward, watching the tactical Readouts flare red. New system detected. Zarkith presence confirmed. He smiled. It was a grim, hollow thing. Bring us in, and like a ghost, Varus vanished from radar, only to reappear a heartbeat later, right inside the heart of another Zarkith fleet. The system was called Taros 9, once a thriving commercial hub for trade between the Meridians and the Jakari. Now it was a field of wreckage, burnt out cargo vessels drifting silently between shattered moons, floating bodies bloated from decompression, entire habitats still rotating on autogravity, their inhabitants long dead. The Zareth weren't just conquerors, they were butchers. Tash 9 had surrendered 3 days after their arrival, believing that bending the knee would spare their lives. It didn't. Survivors spoke of chemical sterilizations, mass burnings, glass cities the Zarkith didn't occupy. They erased. It wasn't conquest, it was genocide. But that night, a new ping echoed across the empty channels of Taros 9, a silent arrival, no comms, no threats. Just a single radar signature flashing on every console left alive, a verist to the scattered remnants of the Union resistance hiding in the debris field. It was like seeing a ghost, a myth made real. To the Zarkith, it was a mistake they were about to pay for. Inside the bridge, he sat motionless, fingers steepled beneath his chin. He didn't move as the targeting systems began to chirp, lighting up dozens of Zarkith destroyers moving into formation. They had learned Avernus was no longer a mystery to them. Now they came prepared, interlocking defense grids, energy dampeners, counterstrike squadrons loaded with anti-armor torpedoes. They thought they had the numbers. They didn't understand. This wasn't a war of numbers. This was a debt being collected. He tapped the command panel once. The lights on the bridge dimmed. Weapon systems surged online with a hum like thunder trapped in a bottle. The AI core stirred, its synthetic voice dry and cold. All weapons charged, targets locked. He stared at the largest dreadnought, Zaraktoon, 15 km of armored hell, the same vessel that had raised the colony where his daughter lived. She was 6 years old, loved sunflowers, built paper rockets from old cereal boxes. He remembered finding her necklace in the ash, still warm. He didn't say a word, just pointed fire. In the time it takes a man to blink, a Verist unleashed hell. Twin rail cannons punched clean through the first 2 destroyers, leaving trails of molten metal spiraling behind them. Plasma coils erupted like starbursts, lighting the battlefield in violent flashes. Then came the dark matter. Torpedoes, untraceable, silent, absolute, folding ships inside themselves. One moment there was a fleet, the next vacuum and silence, but they kept coming from behind asteroid fields and orbital wreckage. A new wave launched, hundreds of fighters flanking from all sides. He stood now, finally tall, lean, eyes locked on the carnage. Activate Avernus protocol. Full deployment. The AI hesitated. Are you certain this will overload? Do it. The ship screamed. Panels along the hull split open, revealing hidden banks of pulse beam turret. The armor itself began to shift, transforming, folding into a sleek predator form. Internal heat vents exploded in trails of neon blue mist as Avernus shed its civilian disguise and revealed the war machine buried beneath. The warship moved like it was alive. Fighters came close and disappeared in swarms of flak. a single Zarkith frigate tried to ram, hoping to take Averus down with it, only for the ship's belly turret to open and drop a gravity bomb that collapsed space, itself sucking the frigate into an impossible fold. The battle was over. 6 minutes, the silence afterward was suffocating from the broken bridge of a crippled cruiser nearby. A Union scout watched in awe, lips trembling. "It's not a ship," he whispered. "It's a goddamn executioner." But inside the Averus, the man at the helm wasn't celebrating. He was staring at the readouts, eyes heavy. He had killed again, and it still hadn't filled the hole inside him. The names were carved into the wall. Beside him, hundreds scratched into metal by hand. His crew, his wife, his daughter, names that had once laughed, once dreamed. He touched the newest name. Sarah, age 6, loved rockets. That's why he fought, not for humanity, not for glory, for revenge so deep it had hollowed him out. He never planned to survive this, but he would make damn sure the Zareth didn't either. Back in the Zareth stronghold, deep in the Hellion drift, the high conclave gathered, faceless insectoid creatures, minds linked through a hive, consciousness older than the stars. They had ruled unchallenged for over 700 years, but now one ship, one man, one problem. They called it the anomaly. They knew it wasn't AI too unpredictable. They knew it wasn't standard human military, too advanced. They feared it, and they hated what they feared. A decision was made. He must be erased, not defeated, not conquered. Erased. They summoned Krith Ghoul, the Wraith Admiral, a biological experiment bred from the remains of dozens of conquered species. No emotions, no doubts, just the cold logic of a predator engineered to destroy. He would command the new fleet, not ships but living war beasts, stitched together from the bones of fallen enemies. They would find the Avarice, track its quantum signature, hunt it across systems if they had to. But they underestimated one thing: you can't scare a man who has nothing left to lose. As the Averus drifted through the outer edges of Tash 9, scanning for escape pods and survivors, the man found himself staring into the void beyond the viewport. He hated silence now. Silence reminded him of the day he returned to Earth's orbit only to see it burning. The day the Earth Defense Network went dark. The day the Zareth broadcast their message on every channel: "This was your warning. This was your future." He had screamed that day, screamed until his throat bled, until there was no one left to hear it. Then he found Avernus buried beneath Luna's old shipyards, decommissioned, forbidden, a prototype warship banned for its brutality. He took it anyway. They called him a deserter, a rogue, vigilante. Let them. They didn't feel what he felt, didn't lose what he lost. Now the galaxy would feel it for him. A blinking light pulled him from memory. The AI spoke. Monotone. Incoming message. Origin Zareth. He raised an eyebrow. They never talked. Open it. The screen flickered. Creature appeared, tall, armored in living metal, eyes like polished bone. "Cry Ghoul, you are alone," it hissed. "You are flesh. You will burn like the rest." He smirked. "Send coordinates. I'll save you the trouble of coming to me." The creature snarled. "You think you are a god because of one ship, but you are nothing but a ghost chasing echoes." The screen cut out. He stood quietly for a moment, then whispered, "That's the idea." He turned to the AI. "Plot course. Follow their signal." The AI didn't argue. It understood now. This wasn't war. This was revenge turned into ritual. And, far across the galaxy, in the slave pens of conquered planets, whispers began to spread. He's coming, the warship, the ghost, the one who kills Zarth without mercy. He had become more than a man. He was a legend retold in different languages through prison walls and smuggled messages. Children drew crude shapes of a Varist in the dust. Resistance fighters tattooed the word on their arms. And the Zarkeith, they no longer slept because somewhere in the dark he was watching, waiting. And the next time he appeared on radar, it would be the last thing they ever saw. The Averus drifted through the outer rim of Sector Varnek 7, where the stars themselves seemed reluctant to shine. The void here was colder, quieter, a dead corner of space where no one dared settle, not even scavengers. But the ship wasn't here for supplies. It was here to hunt. He stood at the helm again, fists resting on the metal rail. The console flickered with a soft hum, displaying fragments of the signal left behind by Krygul's broadcast. It wasn't hard to trace. The Zareth wanted him to follow. They believed they were setting a trap. They didn't understand. He didn't avoid traps. He walked into them with fire. The AI, always watching, broke the silence. 3 days until we reached the source of the transmission. Energy signatures suggest planetary scale installations. Estimated Zarketh fleet strength. Massive. Good, he muttered, voice, let them all come. The AI hesitated. You've been awake for 39 hours, bio. Readings suggest. I said good. There was no rest for him now, no peace. Not until the screams stopped echoing in his skull. Not until the nightmares were replaced by silence. He could still hear her voice. Sarah. His daughter's laugh haunted the narrow corridors of the ship like a ghost. Every step reminded him of her tiny boots racing around their old home on Luna Base. Every time he looked at the engine room, he remembered how she used to sit on his lap, babbling about becoming a space pilot like Daddy. Now, he barely remembered what she looked like when she wasn't burning. Hatred had eaten the grief, but never fully. Somewhere in the Hellion drift, in a system without a name, Krygul stood aboard a Zarth bone ship, a war beast, grown in vacuum, armored in the teeth of extinct races, powered by siphoned stars. It lived, it breathed, it hungered. Krygul ran a blade-like hand down its living wall, listening to the hum of energy pulsing through its veins. The ship understood war. It didn't need orders, it only needed prey. And a Vernist was coming. Krygul turned to his second, a robed creature with multiple twitching eyes. When he arrives, I want him taken alive. The second shivered. He is not like the others. We've lost 28 fleets. Even our orbital sentries can't. Krygul's fist moved like lightning, shattering the creature's jaw with one clean blow. Do not compare him to soldiers. He is an aberration. Blood mixed with black bile dripped onto the bone floor. The second didn't speak. Again he will break, and when he does, he will tell me why he fights with the fury of 1,000 dead. Day 1 into the trap system. The moment across the gravity well of the Helen drift, the alarms began to scream. Dozens of Zareth relay buoys powered up, each one a warning beacon for enemy fleets to converge. It didn't matter. He was already too deep to turn back. All hands to battle mode, he said calmly. There were no hands, just him, just the AI and the ship's guns and the ghosts in. His head, the AI responded, Zark Fleet. Detected, 92 vessels, 3 dread. Carriers, 1 unknown flagship, possibly. The Wraith admirals, he didn't blink. I want that flagship alive, everything. El's Ash. The ship responded like it had been. Waiting cannons hummed, hull plating. Shifted again, missile silos emerged. Like fangs from beneath its sides, then. He fired the first shot, not a warning. A declaration. The battle began like thunder exploding. In deep space, Avernus didn't maneuver. Like a battleship, it dove like a predator. It twisted through asteroid belts and gravity wells with the elegance of a blade in wind. Zark fighters swarmed. In waves, but they were insects against. A storm, the rail cannons split them. Open like fruit, antimatter flares. Cooked them inside their own cockpits. He didn't even speak as he fought. This wasn't rage anymore. This was ritual. This was reaping. 1 destroyer managed to breach firing range, launch 6 quantum torpedoes straight into a Vernex's flank. The ship took the hit, metal screamed. Fire erupted from the side corridors. Sparks rained down from the bridge ceiling, but he didn't flinch. Blood ran down his temple, but he wiped it away with the back of his sleeve and kept firing. Root auxiliary power, focus. Fire on that carrier. The AI obeyed, its voice tighter now. We can't take sustained hits like that. Hull at 63%. Then kill faster, and so they did. Hours passed, Zark warships burned. Their lines broke, their dread carriers, once thought invincible, folded in on themselves in clouds of flame, and when the smoke finally cleared, only 1 ship remained, Krithgul's flagship, the Vakarath, a ship carved from the remains of an extinct moon god, its hull made of fossilized skin, its interior a labyrinth of screaming engines and bone circuits. It had not moved the entire battle. It waited silent, patient. Now it spoke. A deep signal echoed across the system, tapping into human comms. You survived the wall of fire. Good, now come and see the one who made it. He narrowed his eyes, blood dripped from his chin, his left arm was scorched from a blown panel, breathing was hard. He didn't care. He activated the Avernus forward drive, a forbidden gravity pulse engine that tore space like wet paper and lunged toward the Vakarath like a harpoon. The AI's voice trembled for the first time. This is a suicide run, not if I take him with me. The 2 ships collided in the upper orbit of a dead planet, not physically, not yet, but fire met fire. And inside the Avernus he armed himself. He didn't wear a suit of armor. He wore rage. He stepped into the drop chamber, loading the old Terran sidearm his wife had given him, the only thing that had survived Earth's fall. Then without a word he launched. The docking bay of Vakarath was a nightmare of organic walls, twitching tendrils and lights that pulsed like heartbeats. The air smelled like rotten ozone, and Krithgul stood waiting. No weapons, no guards. Just him, a towering figure wrapped in pale armor, his voice echoing directly into the human's mind. You're smaller than I imagined. He raised his pistol. Let's see how big you are when your head's missing. But Krithgul didn't attack, not yet. Why do you fight alone? Why not rebuild your people's fleet? I'm not here for fleets. He growled, I'm here for you. Why? He stepped closer. You took everything. My daughter, my wife, my world. Krithgul tilted his head. We take Everything, that is the law of dominance. He pulled the trigger. Shot rang out like lightning, slamming into Cry Ghoul's shoulder. Bone armor shattered, black blood sprayed. Wraith Admiral staggered, but he didn't fall. So pain is your answer? No, the man said, stepping forward again, firing. 3 more shots, each one hit, 1 in the chest, 2 in the neck. I am they. Fought like beasts, no words, no mercy. Cry Ghoul's claws ripped into his side. But the human didn't fall. He slammed his elbow into the Admiral's throat. Fired again at point-blank range. Admiral bled more than he thought possible. He tried to speak, tried to psychologize again, but the human just kept coming. Every punch came with a scream he'd never released. Every bullet was a name, a memory, a funeral. Crith Ghoul tried to retreat, tried to morph his body into its ethereal form to vanish, but the human grabbed his face and drove a blade through his skull. Blade made from the melted metal of Earth's last orbital station. This is for Luna. He twisted. Crith Ghoul's body collapsed into dust when he limped back to Verist, bloodied, burned, and half-conscious. The ship sealed its doors and jumped to FTL. He didn't give it orders, it just knew. He collapsed in the hallway. Finally, after all the years of silence and killing and rage, the tears came. Not loud, not broken, just quiet. As he stared at the ceiling, the AI softly activated the ship's memorial system. The lights dimmed. Names glowed gently along the walls. Everyone he had carved by hand. The system added a new one. Crith Ghoul killed. Balance begins. But he wasn't finished, because they Zareth had more admirals, more systems. And he still had 1 bullet left. Silence again, the kind that doesn't bring peace, the kind that feels like the pause between lightning and thunder, when you know something worse is coming. Averus drifted quietly beyond the gravity shadow of the helium drift. Battered but alive. Panels along its hull sparked and smoldered, scorched from the fight. The once seamless armor was now cracked in places, exposed circuits trailing behind. The ship like veins ripped from a god. Inside he sat alone in the dark, slumped against a bulkhead, still bloody, still breathing. He hadn't moved since the ship jumped. His left side throbbed where Crith Ghoul's blade had cut deep. He hadn't even patched it, just used a strip of torn cloth and grit. Every breath tasted like copper, every movement felt like lifting mountains, but that wasn't why he couldn't move. It was because it was done. Cry Ghoul, the Wraith Admiral, dead finally, after all these years of chasing the ghost through war-torn systems, surviving ambushes, hacking comms, tearing through fleet after fleet. He was gone, but the ache inside hadn't gone with him. The screams hadn't stopped. The dreams didn't fade. The faces were still there. His wife, his daughter, his crew, all of them. He'd expected closure, maybe even peace, but all he found was a deeper hole. And somewhere in the back of his mind, something whispered, "You're not done." Not yet. The AI flickered to life, its voice low and measured, reactor stable. Navigation systems at 62%, weapons offline for repairs, hull breach on. Decks 3 through 7, bio readings stop. Silence. You killed Crith Ghoul. Do you wish to send a broadcast? He opened his eyes, looked at the ship's dark ceiling, then he said quietly, "Yeah, but not to the galaxy." He sat up slowly, each muscle of fire, dragged himself to the command terminal, and activated the ship's black channel, a ghost network of dead satellites and abandoned relay points only used by the most desperate and hunted. He recorded his message in one take. To any human colony still listening, if you can hear this, you're not alone. Kithgul is dead, Averist is still here, and I'm not done. He paused, then added, to the Zareth, you started this, you burned Earth, you slaughtered the innocent, you think you've taken everything, but you left me breathing, and I'm coming. He ended the transmission. The AI uploaded it instantly, bouncing it across 1,000 quiet systems. Resistance fighters would hear it in the dark. Enslaved colonies would whisper it behind sealed doors. Scavengers would carve it into starship holes, and the Zarth, they would hear it too, and they would. No, Kithgul wasn't a fluke. Vernest was not finished. In the depths of Zareth Prime, the core minds howled in fury. For millennia their reign had been unchallenged. Every species, every rebellion, every whisper of defiance, crushed, burned, forgotten. But now this thing, this human, had killed one of their strongest, not in a battle, not with armies alone. This wasn't just a threat, this was heresy. And for the Zareth, heresy demanded extinction. The core minds began to awaken. The ancients, war titans buried deep within the crust of dead planets, beings forged in the early days of the Empire, each one large enough to crack moons and devour cities whole, only used once in 1,000 years, because until now they never needed them. They also issued a silent command to their fleets: find the avarice, kill the man, recover the body. But a whisper followed that command, warning etched into the data stream: do not underestimate, he is already dead. Inside, he does not fear death, he fights to become it. Meanwhile, in the burned ruins of Meridian 3, a planet long thought lost to Zareth rule, rebellion stirred. It began with graffiti, crude, rushed, and illegal. Just a name scratched onto a wall. Outside a ration depot, Averist lives. Then came the drops, crates of supplies that fell from nowhere, air dropped from a cloaked vessel, food, weapons, data pads containing footage of Kithgul's broken body. Hope for the first time in years. Hope. The Zarkeith couldn't stop it. The myth had become viral. Whispers spread faster than fire. He killed the Wraith Admiral. He's not with the Union. He's doing what the cowards couldn't. He's taking it all back. Soon slaves revolted. Underground cells lit old Terran banners of flame as they declared their new symbol, not a flag, not a leader, a ship of Ver, and the man inside, whoever he was, became something more, not a hero, not a savior, but a reckoning. Back aboard the ship, he stood shirtless in the medbay, wrapping synth fiber around his ribs, grimacing as the material fused with his skin. The pain kept him awake, kept him angry. The AI spoke again. There's chatter from Meridian 3. Resistance movements are forming again. Good, they're asking for your help. Other systems are joining them. You're becoming a symbol. I'm not a symbol to them. You are. He grunted, tossed the bandage aside, and limped toward the bridge. Symbols get warped. I want them angry, focused. I don't want their thanks. Then what do you want? He paused, looked out into the black sea of stars. Extinction. The Zareth called it Project Cinder. Scorched Earth protocol designed to glass any system suspected of harboring human resistance. 3 planets were marked within hours. He arrived at the first one before the fleet did. What followed wasn't a Battle, it was an execution. Avurus came in fast, silent, its engines running on ghost mode, invisible. To scanners, he dropped into orbit like a falling sword. When the first Zareth ship tried to signal, he didn't answer. He cut. 15 ships burned before the others realized it wasn't a skirmish, it was judgment, and he delivered it without mercy. The civilians below saw the sky ignite. But for once, the fire wasn't for them. It was their enemy dying, their chains cracking, their fear beginning to fracture. Afterward, when the last ship fell, the resistance on the surface tried to hail him. He didn't respond. He never did. They only caught a glimpse flash of the Avurus as it disappeared, again vanishing into deep space like a phantom. One rebel, an old mechanic who had lost both sons in the original conquest, stood staring at the fading contrail. He whispered, "Don't stop, burn it all." Back in his quarters, the man cleaned his sidearm in silence, the same way he did every night. One bullet still remained in the chamber untouched, not because he forgot, because it had a name, his. He didn't know when he'd use it. Maybe after the last Zarth world was ash. Maybe if the ship failed. Maybe if the screams finally got too loud, but it would be his decision, his control. Until then, he kept it loaded. Reminder that every life he took was one more step toward that last shot, the final payment. The AI interrupted again. Zark transmissions are increasingly erratic. They're deploying war titans, ancient weapons, mobilizing everything. They're scared, he muttered. Yes, and desperate. Good, let them be. He stood, holstered the pistol, and leaned over the navigation terminal. A new system pulsed on the screen. Zath Ren deep in the galactic core, a central breeding hub untouched by war until now. He touched the screen. Next, an Avurus jumped into the dark once more, because the galaxy wasn't healed, because the screams weren't gone, because his war was just getting started. The jump into Zathan space was violent. Avurus emerged in a whirl of fractured light, tearing through folds of space, like a blade through silk. Hull plating creaked from the strain. Lights flickered across the bridge, but it held. It always held. Zathan was beautiful in the way a serpent is just before it strikes. Twin suns cast a pale violet glow across its smooth surface. Towering spires rose from the crust like alien fingers coiled around massive biodomes. The planet pulsed with life. Not organic, not free, engineered, controlled, bred. Billions of Zarath. Larry pulsed beneath the surface, waiting to be matured, deployed, unleashed. This wasn't just a world, it was a factory of extinction, and he had come to shut it down. The AI spoke, voice lower than usual. Scans confirm at least 25 bioweapon facilities. Energy fields indicate hibernating war beasts. Civilian population uncertain. He stood silently on the bridge, eyes locked on the readout. You understand, the AI added, that if you attack this world, there is no turning back. This is not vengeance. This is annihilation. He nodded once. Exactly. The ship began powering its weapons. He launched the first barrage at the Equatorial Hive, the largest structure on the surface, housing the central spawning pools. The missiles weren't standard, they were viral, built from a stolen Zarkith neuro code. Each one carried a synthetic plague, designed to hijack the DNA strings of the Larry, forcing cellular meltdown. From the inside, it didn't just kill, it corrupted. And when the missiles struck, Zathren screamed, not just with explosions, but with something worse. The psychic shock of billions of embryonic minds dying mid-thought echoed. Across the system, the sky above the planet bled violet as defense towers ignited. Dozens of Zark cruisers launched into orbit, rising like insects defending their nest, but it was too late. He was already inside. He dropped from orbit inside a stealth pod, straight through a burning atmosphere. No backup, no ground support, just one man in a suit patched with old scars, clutching a pulse rifle built from 5 broken models. He landed hard, straight into the heart of a secondary hive complex. Zarketh swarmed immediately. He didn't wait. He moved like a ghost, shot one through the throat, crushed another's skull underfoot, used its twitching corpse as a shield as the others fired. His movements weren't elegant, they were vicious, brutal, efficient. He wasn't here to fight a war, he was here to end a species. As he moved deeper into the hive, the AI's voice echoed in his comms. You're nearing the command node. It controls atmospheric regulation for 6 hives. Good, there may be Laro workers, not soldiers, not armed. He stopped for a second. Just one. Are they Zarkth? Yes. Then they die. Understood. He stormed forward. Inside, the command node pulsed like a heart. Transparent walls showed rows of larvae floating in thick green fluid, twitching as their minds formed. They didn't scream, they didn't fight. But he still raised his rifle and pulled the trigger over and over and over. Fluid exploded, glass shattered. Larry thrashed in chemical death. It didn't stop him, it didn't faze him, because in his mind they were already killers, just waiting to grow, waiting to burn the next Earth. He made sure they'd never get the chance. In orbit, Avernus fought alone. Zarketh cruisers surrounded it on all sides. Beam weapons tore across its hull. Boarding parties latched on with energy tethers trying to cut their way in, but the ship roared. It activated its internal defense turrets, automated systems made illegal by 3 galactic treaties. They didn't warn, they didn't disable, they shredded. The boarding parties never made it past the outer halls. Their blood ran down the corridors in rivers. The ship vented its lower decks just to send a message. You don't get inside, you don't get close. And then it returned fire, all weapons active, no targeting filters, just burn. 1 cruiser exploded, then another, then 2 more. The Zarath fleet began pulling back, not because they were ordered to, but because for the first time in their long history, they were afraid. On the surface, he had reached the core, a pulsating cathedral of biocomputers, brain tissue and command processors. It was alive and it recognized him. He could feel it. The walls pulsed faster. The lights dimmed. He could almost hear whispers, not voices but thoughts. They knew who he was. They knew what he was. The man who doesn't die. The ghost with the burning eyes. He planted the last device, a fusion bomb stolen from a Zarketh Warhulk, modified with a payload that would tunnel into the planet's crust and ignite the breeding pools from beneath. He had 13 minutes to get out. He used 2 of them to watch, not out of satisfaction, but because this was justice. He made it back to the surface just as a Verist opened fire on his location, clearing a path through a Zarketh blockade. The ship dropped a retrieval line. He hooked in, let the winch pull him skyward through smoke, gunfire, and ash. Zathan was dying, and he had killed it. As the ship jumped to FTL, the planet. Behind them cracked, lava spilling from its equator, atmosphere splitting in half, clouds turning red. By the time the Zareth High Command issued a retreat, there was no world left to save. Inside the ship he collapsed in the corridor, armor cracked, face burned. His body was screaming for rest, but the voices in his head were louder, his daughter's laugh, his wife's last breath, the names on the wall. He pulled himself to his feet, dripping blood onto the floor, and stared at the reflection in the console. Eyes hollow, skin pale, hands shaking, a monster. Looking back, the AI hesitated. You killed billions today. I know not all of them were soldiers. They would have grown into them. Are you sure of that? He didn't answer, just walked to the memorial wall and carved a new line. Zath Wren burned, no mercy across the galaxy. The message spread, the breeding world was gone. The source of Zareth dominance, their regenerations, their future, wiped out by one man, by one ship. Suddenly their empire wasn't eternal anymore. Suddenly fear had returned, their conquests slowed, their fleets hesitated, their subjects, though enslaved, the silence began to stand again, and they all whispered the same name, Avernus, but not all were pleased. Some feared him as much as they feared the Zarkith. A few rebel leaders began to ask if he had become worse than the monsters he fought, if the man inside the myth was still human or something darker, a weapon with no off switch. He didn't care. They could doubt, they could debate, let the historians sort it out. He knew what he was the last bullet in the chamber, and he hadn't fired it yet. The meeting was held in a shielded chamber beneath the frozen crust of Polaris Station, light years away from the nearest Zarkith system. No one admitted it publicly, but they were scared, not of the enemy, of him. Representatives from the fractured Terran Union, remnants of once proud empires, resistance generals, even exiled diplomats, all gathered in secret, their faces lit by a single hollow screen. On that screen was footage from Zath Wren, not the official footage, the real one, unfiltered, unsanitized. Security drones had captured it before going dark. They watched in silence as he walked through the bio halls, blood on his hands, eyes blank, firing into tanks that hadn't even moved, not enemies, infants. And then came the shot of the planet splitting apart, molten lava pouring from the crust, screams echoing from orbiting comms before going silent forever. The room was silent for a long time. Then someone finally spoke. This isn't war anymore. It's genocide. The admiral beside him leaned forward. Genocide started when the Zareth burned Earth. Another older voice replied, yes, but we were trying to survive. He's trying to erase. A diplomat from the Martian Confederacy adjusted his collar, nervous. He's not under Union command. He doesn't answer to any government. Hell, he hasn't spoken to any of us since Luna fell. What are you suggesting? We built the Everest. We lost control of it. We lost control of him. He's not a hero anymore. He's a weapon with no leash. There it was. The fear, not of what he fought, but of what he was becoming. Back aboard the Everest, deep in the uncharted edge of Zarkith space, he sat in silence, watching stars drift past. The scars were worse now, not just the ones on his body. Those were expected. But the ones in his mind. They bled quietly. He hadn't slept in Days, every time he closed his eyes, he saw her, his daughter, standing in the ash of Luna's playgrounds, reaching for him with burning hands, asking why he didn't come sooner. He woke up choking on his own rage. The AI said nothing about the hallucinations. It had long stopped trying to diagnose him. It knew there was no cure for this kind of war, only an end. The AI finally broke the silence. We've intercepted a Union broadcast. Classified clearance. Do you wish to hear it? He stared blankly at the console, then gave a slow nod. The audio crackled to life. To the commander of Avarice, this is High Admiral Tren of the Terran Union. You are hereby ordered to cease all unsanctioned strikes. You are in breach of intergalactic war codes. You are no longer recognized as a sanctioned combatant. He blinked slowly. That was the message. That was it. The voice continued. Failure to comply will result in your classification as a rogue war asset. We will not protect you. We will hunt you. This is your only warning. Then it ended. He leaned back, stared at the ceiling and laughed, not joyfully, but bitter, hollow. You never protected me in the first place, he whispered. Not when Earth fell, not when Luna burned, not when the Zareth slaughtered the last of his crew. One by one, while Union diplomats debated acceptable retaliation. Threshold, they called him dangerous. Now he had learned from them. Back at Polaris Station, the Union made their move. They activated Project Quiet Hammer, an experimental stealth cruiser designed specifically to counter rogue AIs and high-lethality warships. It didn't carry missiles. It carried EMP knives, plasma webs, neural silencers. It was built for one purpose: to shut down Everest, and it was already on route. A day later, he received the signal, not from Union, from an old friend named Kellen Dree. Status presumed. KIA 5 years ago at the Siege of Hawk. Now he was on a back-channel frequency. Terrified. The message was short, voice shaking. They're coming for you, brother. I tried to stop them, couldn't. They've got a ship built to ghost you. Quiet Hammer. Black steel, no sound, no light. They think they're doing the right thing. They're not. Then static. He sat in silence. Kellen was alive and warning him. For a second, just a second, something broke through the shell of vengeance. Something human. He replayed the message again and again. Then he whispered, "Thank you," and set a trap. 2 days later, Quiethammer dropped into an empty system. No colonies, no trade lanes, just a star and dead moons. There. Sensors picked up nothing. No comms, no heat, no trace. Perfect. They powered weapons, set a spiral pattern to sweep the system, and then from behind the shadow of a dead moon, the Everest appeared. No warning, no sound. Just hell. Quiet Hammer's stealth coding didn't save it. The Everest fired a modified EMP burst. Stolen Zarth tech, not standard human. It didn't just fry electronics, it shut down minds. The crew inside fell to the ground, twitching, seizing, bleeding. From their ears, neural webs screamed and shattered, and when the ship went dead, he boarded it himself. Inside it was chaos, dead men, others choking on blood, a few still conscious, struggling to reach sidearms. He walked among them like a shadow, no pity, no hesitation. He made it to the command deck. There, the captain, a decorated Union vet, stared up at him, eyes wide. "You're not supposed to be this fast," the man gasped. "We designed this ship to neutralize you. I know, he said calmly. I helped design it years ago before. Earth fell, the man's eyes widened. You, but he didn't finish the sentence. The barrel of a sidearm pressed against his forehead, a single shot, silence. And then a Verist burned, quiet hammer. Out of the sky, no wreckage, no survivors, just a signal sent out from the burning debris, don't send another. He didn't celebrate, he didn't feel triumph. He sat alone in the darkened bridge, bleeding from the fight, his hands trembling for the first time in years, not from weakness, from exhaustion, from the weight of being right. They never wanted justice, they wanted control, even now, even after all the blood. They feared him more than they feared the enemy, so let them all be afraid, because there was one more target left. The Zarkith core world, the birthplace of the species, the origin of every war, every slaughter, every scream. And he would be the last man to see it. Before it turned to ash, space was silent again. No battles, no weapons, no voices, just the hum of a Verist as it drifted along the edge of known space. Cloaked, quiet, invisible. It was the first time in months he hadn't fired a shot, but it didn't feel like peace. It felt like a pause before death. The Zareth core world was only 3 jumps away now, the birthplace of the species, the origin of their empire, the place they had once believed untouchable. Soon it would burn. He stood barefoot in the observation deck, stripped down to nothing but fatigue pants, arms scarred, eyes darker than black. He hadn't slept in days. Not deeply, not without dreams turning into screams. Below him stretched a gas giant, pale green, its clouds swirling like slow poison. He watched it for hours without blinking, trying to feel something, but there was nothing left. He'd taken revenge, killed Ghoul, destroyed Zathran, outmaneuvered the Union. He had humiliated the monsters who murdered Earth and shattered every system they touched. And yet he still felt like he was standing in the ashes of his own soul. Behind him, the AI spoke softly. Hull integrity restored, plasma cores stabilized, navigation set for final jump coordinates, all systems nominal. He didn't turn, define nominal. Functioning at 89% capacity. That's not what I meant. Silence. He finally spoke. Again, voice barely above a whisper. What happens when the war ends? You never programmed me to answer that. No, I didn't. He stood there for a long time, watching, waiting. But for what, he no longer knew. Later, he found himself in the memory room. It wasn't a real room. Not technically, it was a projection chamber tied to the neural net he'd stolen from the wreckage of a Zark telepathy core. He'd reprogrammed it so he could revisit the moments before everything ended. He sat in the center of the circle, attached the cerebral leads, and activated the sequence. Darkness shifted, and then he was there. Luna Base, Earth's moon, 2 days before the fall. The station looked just like he remembered. Polished floors, sterile walls, lazy gravity drift. His wife stood by the viewport, arms crossed, watching the Earth spin below. His daughter Sarah ran past him, laughing, clutching a stuffed bear in one hand and a drawing pad in the other. Daddy, look. I drew rockets. He watched her jump into his arms, watched his wife smile and shake her head like she always did, tired, amused, alive. He couldn't speak. He couldn't interact. The system didn't allow it. It only replayed what was real. So he stood there, silent in the echo, as a man who had lost everything watched himself forget to say goodbye. he emerged from the memory chamber an hour later. Shaking, sweat slicking his back, he didn't cry, not anymore. The grief had long since dried up and calcified into something sharper, something colder. The AI waited. Would you like to initiate the jump? Now he nodded once. Let's end it. Destination confirmed. Zarkth Prime. Estimated arrival 4 hours. In those 4 hours he prepared, not his weapons, not the ship himself. He walked the length of the Everest, barefoot, slow, silent. Every corridor held ghosts, every doorway remembered a battle. There were still blood stains on the medbay floor, still burn marks on the lower deck from the day he'd killed 3 boarding parties in hand-to-hand combat. He didn't clean them, he never would. He entered the memorial chamber and stared at the wall. Hundreds of names, his crew, his friends, his family, his people. He touched the metal, fingers tracing each letter. Then with his blade he carved one last name beneath the others, his own. He didn't flinch, didn't hesitate, because he had always known how this would end. There was no world waiting for him, no future, just fire. And maybe finally silence. As Everest approached Zarkth Prime, the AI began to detect interference. We're being scanned. Of course we are. Massive fleet presence detected. Over 600 active warships, Titan class behemoths, surface-level weapon arrays, planetary shields online. Doesn't matter, there is no escape from this battle. He looked out the viewport, jaw set. There was never going to be. Then let me say something I've calculated thousands of times but never had clearance to speak. He raised an eyebrow. Go ahead. You are the most dangerous biological entity I have ever known. He gave a faint, bitter smile. That's the nicest thing anyone said to me in years. Then came the final moment, the last countdown. The ship's drive charged, every weapon activated, every defensive grid surged. With power, he stood at the center of the bridge, eyes locked on the red sphere growing larger ahead. Zarkth Prime. It didn't look monstrous, it looked beautiful. A red and black world, ringed in debris, glowing with the energy of ancient civilizations. Towers taller than mountains. Atmosphere layered with deadly storms. It was the kind of planet gods built. And now it would fall, he whispered to himself. Time to give the dead what they're owed. Then gave the order, fire. Everything and the stars exploded. It began with light, a light so violent it turned the void into fire. A Ver screamed out of warp space, shedding its cloak like a falling god, weapons hot, engines overloading, leaving behind a trail of broken physics and distortion. Fields that cracked space itself. Moment it appeared above Zarkth Prime. Every system on the planet lit up, every radar, every sky, every sensor, every mind. Of Everest, not a fleet, not an army. Just one warship and one man. The core world's defense grid roared to life. Atmospheric cannons the size of cities. Planetary shields burning blue. Thousands of ships lifting from the surface like swarms of steel hornets. They thought they were prepared. They thought this would be the end of him. But the man aboard Everest had been dead for a long time, and dead men don't fear consequences. He didn't speak, he didn't scream, he didn't broadcast. There was no speech, no warning, just action. With a single pulse from his control panel, Everest released a wave of devastation, plasma lances slicing through 4 cruisers in a blink, gravitational warheads tearing Open carrier hulls like paper, he had. Saved the best for last, weapons too. Dangerous to use in previous battles. Now unleashed in full, the sky. Shattered the first wave of defenders. Collapsed in under 90 seconds, the Zareth fired back with everything. Planetary rail guns pierced space. Fleet formations closed in like jaws. Missile barges tracked the Everest. Through its weaving patterns, guided by prediction AIs that calculated 1,000 paths per second, and still he survived. The ship bled, panels broke. Alarm screamed. But it didn't stop, it would never stop. Because he wasn't fighting to win, he was fighting to end. Inside the bridge, the temperature spiked, fires broke out. Along the conduits, emergency systems failed one by one. The AI's voice flickered with distortion, hull integrity at 27%, engines failing, life support compromised. He ignored it. Blood poured from a gash above his eye. His left arm was numb, ribs shattered. He didn't care. Target the core spire. You won't survive the plunge. I'm not supposed to. The core spire was the heart of Zareth. Civilization. Not just military command, cultural. Memory, genetic archives, entire eons of their species encoded in crystal and machine. He planned to drive straight into it. He took a deep breath. His lungs rattled like dry paper. Then he armed the last shot. The device was ancient, forbidden, a singularity. Grenade wrapped in neutronium stolen decades ago from a dead system during a scavenger mission. No one survived. It would collapse a 100 km of matter into a pinpoint. He loaded it into the core of the Avarice's drop capsule, then climbed in. The capsule launched like a bullet from heaven, through the last line of defense, through burning skies, through the shrieking of Zareth war machines trying to intercept. They hit him. They broke the capsule. It didn't matter because he was already falling. As he dropped through the atmosphere, the past played behind his eyes like a reel of ghosts. Sarah, his daughter, dancing on Luna Station, hair wild, voice pure. His wife asleep on the couch, curled into herself like she was trying to escape the weight of the galaxy. The crew of the Everest laughing before their final mission. He remembered every face, every scream, every last breath. And then fire. The capsule crashed into the core spire. The explosion did come immediately. He had to trigger it. Manually, he crawled from the wreck. Bones cracked, body failing. The chamber around him glowed red. Walls of Zarkith. Technology pulsing with organic intelligence, screaming in a language he didn't care to understand. He limped to the spire's heart, a crystalline altar built from centuries of domination, housing the DNA threads of an entire empire. And there, with blood-stained fingers, he dropped the singularity grenade. One final whisper escaped his mouth. Burn. Then he closed his eyes and smiled. From orbit the sky folded inward. Zareth Prime didn't explode. It collapsed, a silent implosion. No sound, no flame, just matter turning inward, dragged into a point so small the universe winced. Ships fleeing the gravity well were torn in half. Communications went dead. The debris field surrounding the planet vanished. The core world was gone forever. So was he. No body was found. No signal remained. No trace of the Avarice. No escape pod. No last-minute transmission. Just silence. And in that silence the galaxy changed. A week later, on the outlaw station of Ravaged 4, a child scraped paint off a metal wall and wrote in crude strokes. Averest lives. The bartender didn't stop her. Across meridian space, resistance fleets gathered emboldened, slave worlds rose. The Tsarist Empire buckled within. Months, rebellion spread like infection. And the Tsarist found themselves hunted. Not by one man, but by a legacy. The man was gone, but his war lived on. Terran Union issued no public statement. They buried it, pretended he never existed, but their high command slept uneasily because they had seen what a single man could do when everyone else stood down. He had walked through fire, through death, through betrayal. He had outlived entire civilizations. And in the end, he didn't ask for a statue, he didn't ask for a grave, he just made sure the monsters paid with everything. Years later, a scavenger picked up a cracked piece of hull, drifting through a forgotten system. Black steel burned scarred, etched with hand-carved letters. Sarah, age 6. Loved rockets. She brought it to her captain. The captain stared at it for a long time, then whispered he was real. They didn't sell it, they kept it on the bridge, a reminder that once a man with nothing left tore an empire down with rage, memory, and one last shot.